Umbridge being worse than Voldemort is a sentiment widely shared across the Harry Potter fandom. A few weeks ago, we ran a poll on this channel asking if she was overhated, and the results were overwhelming. And honestly, those results gave an even clearer picture of just why she is so deeply hated. So, in today's video, we're going to break down exactly why Dolores Umbridge is the most uniquely terrifying villain in the wizarding world.
You deserve to be punished.
Her brand of evil feels familiar. We find it all around us, and this comment explains it precisely. Not every child has encountered anything like Voldemort, but everyone has met an Umbridge. That familiarity is exactly what makes her so much harder to shake. The corrupt authority figure who wields power like a weapon, the narcissist who performs warmth while doing monstrous things, the person in charge who abuses anyone they deem lesser.
Detention, Mr. Potter!
And what makes it even more disturbing is the wrapping it comes in. With her pink tweed, her fluffy throw pillows, and her feather pens, Umbridge projects the image of a sweet, trustworthy figure. Having Imelda Staunton portray her in the films only deepens that matronly illusion. That gap between the presentation and the reality is exactly what makes her so deeply unsettling. But there are more reasons. My name is Elliot, and let's break down every single one. As a senior undersecretary to the Minister for Magic, Umbridge arrives at Hogwarts with a clear mandate: suppress any mention of Voldemort's return and keep the school under Ministry control. And she is genuinely the right person for that job. But beyond her institutional role, she layers on something entirely her own, what psychologists call the Authoritarian Personality. The signs are everywhere. An obsession with rules, hierarchy, and obedience, a deep belief that authority equals moral correctness, and a hostility toward anyone who dares challenge the established order. She doesn't just enforce rules, she worships them. When Harry insists that Voldemort has returned, she doesn't treat that as a difference of opinion, she treats it as a threat that must be crushed. And she relishes the crushing. For Umbridge, control isn't merely a tool, it is a moral duty, and something that functions as personal pleasure. This is what separates her from a bureaucrat simply following orders. She publicly humiliates Professor Trelawney in front of the entire school with a wide, satisfied smile. She enjoys it. That is textbook domineering behavior, using fear to control both staff and students, establishing herself not just as powerful, but as someone to be feared. She doesn't just do cruel things. She does cruel things while being completely convinced she is in the right. She reframes the Blood Quill punishment as necessary discipline. She reframes the Muggle-born Registration Commission trials as justice. And when confronted with the suffering she causes, she shifts the blame entirely onto the victims. They deserved it, they brought it on themselves, she had no choice. And this comment captures exactly why that makes her so much more dangerous than Voldemort. Voldemort and Bellatrix are universally known monsters. The whole wizarding world knows what they are. Umbridge operates in plain sight, and her worst acts go completely unnoticed for years. That invisibility is only possible because she wraps every act of cruelty in the language of order and justice. Umbridge cannot be exposed, shamed, or reasoned with. Her self-image is airtight. J.K. Rowling has spoken about how Umbridge was directly inspired by real-world political figures, people who could inflict harm while genuinely believing they were serving a higher purpose. The administrative busybody doing what they deem to be right for you is yet another archetype that feels far too familiar, and that is exactly what Rowling built her from. And this comment puts it perfectly. Compared to Voldemort's villainy, dangerous yes, but ultimately fantastical, Umbridge represents the kind of danger people encounter every single day. She is the face of institutional oppression, made acceptable through paperwork, procedure, and the quiet authority of someone just doing their job. By prioritizing efficiency over empathy, she doesn't need to shout or threaten. She simply processes people into suffering. In Order of the Phoenix, she dismantles Hogwarts methodically, decree by decree. She restricts student gatherings, limits teacher autonomy, and installs herself first as High Inquisitor and then as Head Mistress. Like real-world authoritarian regimes, she limits free thought while empowering a select group to act as enforcers. That is the entire purpose of the Inquisitorial Squad, handpicked students like Draco Malfoy chosen for their cruelty and willingness to punish their peers. She divides the school from within, cultivating surveillance, betrayal, and the abuse of power among children. Education doesn't escape her either. She bans practical spellcasting in defense against the dark arts entirely, insisting students only read approved theory.
I can't imagine why you would need to use spells in my classroom.
In the middle of a real and growing war, she deliberately leaves students defenseless. The most sinister thing about Umbridge is the contrast between her sweet, pink-drenched exterior and the monstrous reality underneath. She smiles while causing pain. She prefers punishments that are prolonged and humiliating. And she thrives on power exercised in intimate settings where her victim has nowhere to go. Consider what she does before Harry ever sets foot in her detention. She dispatches 2 Dementors to attack Harry and his cousin Dudley in the little winging alleyway with the specific goal of getting Harry expelled for performing underage magic and silencing him before he can warn anyone about Voldemort's return. That is not bureaucratic overreach. That is attempted murder orchestrated from behind a desk. And when Harry confronts her about it later, she admits it openly, with zero remorse, almost as though she is proud of her own ingenuity. But that is only where it starts. Then there is the Blood Quill. I must not tell lies carved repeatedly into the back of Harry's hand by his own movements. The quill writing not in ink, but in the writer's own blood. She watches from behind her desk with a smile. This is not punishment. This is torture dressed up in the language of order. And still, she escalates. When she has Harry cornered and wants information about Dumbledore, she raises her wand and nearly casts the Cruciatus Curse.
The Cruciatus Curse.
One of the 3 unforgivable curses on a 16-year-old student. She is stopped only by Hermione's quick thinking. Not by conscience, not by hesitation. Umbridge gets progressively worse with every chapter she appears in. And when you step back and look at the full picture, this comment says it all. The Dementor attack, the Blood Quill, the Veritaserum on students, the eagerness to cast an unforgivable curse, the Horcrux worn around her neck with no ill effects. Every single item on that list is a window into the same rotten core, and she committed every one of them with a smile on her face. In many ways, Umbridge's bigotry is where she most closely aligns with Voldemort's worldview. Her hatred of half-breeds and Muggleborns runs throughout the series, in her contempt for Hagrid, her treatment of Hermione, and her eventual role as head of the Muggleborn Registration Commission, where she presides over kangaroo courts accusing innocent people of having stolen their magical ability and sends them to Azkaban. But the real story is not what she did, it is what she was hiding while she did it. Dolores Umbridge is not a pureblood. She is a half-blood witch, born to a wizard father and a muggle mother. A fact she spent her entire adult life concealing. Her muggle mother and squib brother disappeared from her life when she was 15. And she erased that half of herself entirely, later claiming relation to the ancient Selwyn family and wearing a confiscated Horcrux locket as a fraudulent status symbol to shore up credentials she had no right to. Think about what that means. The woman who ran trials convicting Muggleborns of stealing magic was herself 1 generation removed from a Muggle. She built an entire career on a lie, then used that career to persecute the very people she had the most in common with. That is not just cruelty. That is not just bigotry. That is the most complete act of hypocrisy in the entire series. Someone so consumed by self-loathing that she turned a system's hatred outward onto people exactly like herself. And she never once acknowledged it. Not a flicker of recognition. The righteousness never cracked.
You're lying.
Ultimately, what makes Umbridge so uniquely hateable is not just what she does. It is how completely she believes she is in the right while doing it. And part of what makes her so personal is this: she was never a background villain. While Voldemort and the Death Eaters were circling from a distance, Umbridge was right there in the corridors, in the classroom, in the headmaster's office. She was the active threat Harry faced every single day. She is dangerous not because she breaks the system, but because she operates perfectly within it while stripping it of every trace of humanity. She is the reminder that not all villains in Harry Potter are on Voldemort's side, and that evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it comes dressed in pink, smiling, and completely convinced it is doing the right thing. And that is exactly why, years later, she still gets under our skin more than the Dark Lord himself. That was our take, along with our audience's verdict. If you enjoyed this and want more deep dives like this, subscribe to the Movie Firm and be part of our polls and community. See you in the next one.